want to take it back to the documentary for a minute, because this is an extraordinary piece of access. Justin Wells was there. He was there in Butler when Trump was shot, when Corey Comparatori lost his life. And we showed on this program, Selena Zito, great Pennsylvania reporter, on the ground, not hurt, but in the moment when people were being hurt. And Justin was in that scrum and got incredible footage that I'd never seen before of Trump after the fact. Here is a little bit of that from, this is episode 2 of Art of the Surge, and a clip of post the Butler assassination attempt.
And look what happened to our country. Probably 20 million people. And you know, that's a little bit old, that
Well, here we are today on the Megyn Kelly Show, and she has as her guest Tucker Carlson. As you can see, they just showed some footage that somebody had taken of the attempted assassination of Trump in Butler, Pennsylvania. Very dramatic. Some interesting shots there. Don't know if it really tells us anything, but let's see what they talk about.
Really chilling stuff. And I mean, Justin must have been in danger there too, obviously. But it's just very rich, Tucker, to hear the Democrats talk about like the danger Trump poses.
I'm just so grateful that Justin and the camera crew was there. The editor on this, Neil Edelstein, put it together because I think it exists, I hope for all time, as a documentary record of what happened, because that event has been memory holed completely. I mean, that was fairly recently, very recently. There's been no systematic effort to explain, understand, rectify why the Secret Service allowed that shooter, which they did. They allowed it, intentionally or not, on the roof of that building, less than 150 yards away. And the entire event has just sort of disappeared from the public consciousness. And it really matters. It matters, like, really more than anything that's happened in the last year. The use of violence against a public figure, the Republicans' presidential candidate, was allowed. And I'm not surprised by it, because this is a group that fetishizes violence. It's one of the reasons they were so happy to welcome the Cheneys into their fold. It's why they have systematically, over the past 15 years, armed the federal agencies in a way that doesn't make any sense at all. How much ammunition have the federal agencies ordered, including, the EPA, the IRS? These are not law enforcement agencies. These are not.
Yeah, what is that about? That is very scary.
Military agencies. Why are they ordering massive amounts of ammunition? To be used against whom? Well, they're domestic agencies, so against American citizens. That's the only answer. So why have they politicized not simply the military, not simply the FBI, the DHS, all the intel agencies? Every armed agency has been systematically brought under the control of the Democratic Party. What is that? Well, that's a distinct focus on violence, on the use of force against other American citizens. And now, apparently, there has been an order from the agencies that would allow the U.S. military to use violence against American citizens. I think that's a fact.
Even more outrageous.
So, like, what would explain that? And again, what explains it, the thread that connects all of this, the assassination attempt on Trump, the support for totally pointless foreign wars, whose only effect is to kill people, it's not to advance the ball for the United States in any sense, just to kill people, and then the arming of the federal agencies, it is a fixation on the use of violence for its own sake. And that's not the right doing that. And they can call you a Nazi or a fascist or whatever, use whatever language they want against you. But the truth is, if you judge people by the things that they do, by their actions rather than their words, the violence is coming overwhelmingly from one side, and the threats of violence from one side. And I don't think they can obscure that. I mean, I think what I'm saying is not partisan. I think it's a fair representation of reality that anyone who's been paying attention has watched for 15 years. It's
really scary. And the nerve.
It is scary.
The the absolute nerve to hear her talk about Trump as the threat, and he's the threat to our country, to our democracy. It's like, okay, literally, we've seen the man almost killed twice, at least twice. Still figuring out what happened that third time, and there's been absolutely no accountability by the Democrats for the incendiary rhetoric around it, for really just ginning people up into a fever around this man. He's still unsafe. We don't have a full accounting for what happened either time, but especially time number one, where he actually did take a bullet. And there's no rolling back of any of their messaging. I mean, they're now that she's really panicking, Tucker, and she is panicking, she's getting worse. Like, she's getting more irresponsible. So is Walz. So are their surrogates.
Well, it's just the same thing they've been saying about Trump since 2016. Calling him a threat, calling him a fascist, implying that he's that he's going to become a dictator, saying he's going to become a dictator. He's going to shut down the government and become dictator for life as soon as he takes office. It's all nonsense. They've been saying this since 2016. And the whole thing, I think people are just, it's the boy who cried wolf too, again. It was boy who cried wolf back in 2016. They're doing it again. They think it's going to work. I don't see how it can possibly work, but anything can happen in politics, especially American politics.
Yeah, I mean, they're really putting him in even more danger, and we do have 3 weeks to go. I mean, obviously, if Trump wins, I think they'll at that point ramp up the Secret Service, but it's still not at maximum levels right now. And you have to wonder whether it's by design.
Well, no one's been fired. I don't understand that. I mean, I've never understood that. In all the years I spent 1985 to 2020 living in D.C. in the District of Columbia, I never understood this, and I always resented it, that there were no consequences for failure. Whether it was at scale, kill 1 million people in the Iraq War, help the United States not at all, hurt the United States profoundly, same in Afghanistan, same in Libya, same in Syria. I mean, that's just at the scale of a war. That's not even counting all the federal programs that not only didn't work, but hurt people.
Yeah, Tucker makes a great point here, and one which Thomas Sowell has made in various books of his, that there is zero accountability. That is really a big problem. If there was accountability, if you're a policy maker and you're coming up with a piece of policy, and you want to implement it, if you were held responsible for the negative effects of that policy, but you're also praised for the positive effects of a policy that worked. But if you're held responsible for a negative policy, if for having a negative effect and for having negative unforeseen consequences, because there's always unforeseen consequences, I think that's absolutely how it should be run. That's the whole point of so-called conservatism, is that you should be held responsible for what you do. And I don't think just as resigning, no, he should be held much more responsible than that. Then we would see a lot less laws being made. We'd see a lot less intervention, a lot less overreach by government. It would make things and things would slow down much better, and that would be a proper conservative response.
Aggressively hurt people, and not one person is ever punished. And I just don't understand. Like, that's not how you raise your children. It's not how any business works. It's not how life works. You have to force people to take responsibility for the bad things they do, or else you will get a whole lot more bad things. That's the most obvious lesson of just being alive. And the fact
what
that
do they
not
say?
one
What you
person,
permit, you promote.
That's exactly right. Weirdly, I've never heard that phrase, but I'm
I
going
got
to
it
use
from my mom.
now on. Oh, I love that. I love that. Okay, so in upstate New York in the 70s, like, they were on this.
A lot of wisdom.
A lot of wisdom, and that's very obvious.
Also, there
But
was stop crying or I'll give you something to cry about.
Did she actually say that?
Of course. I was the 70s.
That's so old school.
Very old school. I was a kid in the 70s too. And yeah, I heard things like that.
Good for her.
She cared.
Go.
That's the important
Go,
thing.
Mrs.
She
Kelly.
cared. No, my favorite was the sign on our kitchen cupboard, which read, lack of planning on your part does not justify an emergency on my part, which that was another truism. Isn't this explaining a lot?
Oh, I just love that. Well, she sounds like an absolutely awesome person who prepared her children for a productive and happy life, which begins
right.
with admitting your role in the disaster. And one of the things I hate doing, but force myself to do in my life, public and private, is if I make a mistake, I just want to say I made a mistake. I hate doing that, but the second you do it, it's taking out a splinter. You've repented, your conscience is a little bit clearer, your credibility is much higher with the people around you, and you can move on. And by the way, you learn something in the process.
Yeah, very good points. I mean, basically, that's the way reality works. That's the way life works. And politicians, any politician, especially at federal level, are never held accountable. And they, yeah, not even resigning. Like this whole Secret Service thing with the Trump shooting it's just outlandish. It's unbelievable, the incompetence, or willful or otherwise, displayed. So anyway, let me know what you think about that. Yeah, do you think? I think reality is extremely conservative, like not Republican conservative, but proper conservative, paleo conservative. Like if you want to change something, you better have a damn good reason for changing it. And if you change it and it doesn't work out, you're going to pay for it. That would already fix a lot of problems. Let me know if you think I'm being a bit too harsh here, or if you have something else to say, please leave a comment. And in the meantime, like and subscribe. It helps me grow the channel and continue making content for you.